Hello. It's been quite a while since the last video here, because I made a bit of a mistake and I couldn't be bothered for a little while. But here I am again, another video doing some physics work on the DeltaWing, or such a sort of car. Last time did a lot of the tire grip stuff, and that's exactly where the mistake was made, which I'm going to fix / look at right now. One of the things here, the loads that I use for the front tires is fine, but it's kind of screwed up the load range. Let's make this a bit nicer. I can drag this all the way up to there, and then without formatting, please. Okay, now I've got a nice spaced out load set for the front tires. Very nice. And what went wrong? Well, I used this number here to calculate the cornering grip of the tires that was required to do a certain g-force in a corner. But this number here is the sum of the torques from the front and the rear axle, which has nothing to do with the grip. It's the sum of these two that is the total cornering grip that is available, which is this one plus that one. Make this red, very important. Okay. Redoing that because entering the numbers. Cornering g-force 4. Yeah. Okay, well, it was quite alright, but it was more luck-ish, because the cornering force here, oh wait, speed, we don't corner at 315, we corner at 250 kilometers an hour. That doesn't matter that much. Well, actually it does. Because, oh dear, we cannot take the corner with these tires I've put in here, because in this situation, which I have to double check if it still applies to what we have over there, but now you can see I've entered a speed which gives us a certain downforce, and we know that front and rear split, that we know what it adds to the front and the rear tires. Then we gave it a cornering g-force and did the calculations to come up with the tire loads when taking such a corner at that speed, and then with imaginary friction coefficients you can come up with the total grip that the tires can provide, which is 17,000 something, but in order to do this we need 2200 something. That's interesting. So I used the wrong numbers before, and now you can see that it may not work. So first I'm going to check if this still matches with these curves here. So the rear left is 1.3 at about 8-ish. Yes. So that's here. And 1.8 at 1000-ish. Yes, that's there. Okay, and 1.5 at the front at 1600 something. So, okay, yeah. These tires do indeed follow this, but not enough grip to do the 4G, which is, 4G is a lot. But if it does it, then with this downforce, then the tires have to be more grippy. How much? Oh, let's cheat and just add a tenth. Let's see what that gets us. Okay, sort of thinking in my head now, what am I looking at? Is this correct or isn't it? is that 4G claim even correct? So I'm going to take 3.5G as a number, which is just subjectively with some experience with cars. I think that's plenty for now. That gives us a required almost 20,000 newtons of cornering force, and I've bumped these up a tenth. That gives me 19 basically. Okay, 1.5 and 2, 1.7, 1.7. That's 20 something. So this would be enough for. See, now we have the total just over 20, and the required is still just under 20. So this will do 3.5G, which I still think is quite a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if this results in overly quick lap times. But hey, who knows? Alrighty, which means I have to add some 0.2 to be precise ish. Let's just do that then. And I look again at the numbers. So now we have to have 2 friction coefficient at the rear at 1200 something. So yes, it's there. 2-ish, that's fine. And 1.5 at a high load of about 8,000 newtons. Yes, that's 1.5, that's fine. And 1.7 on the front at 1600 newtons, that's fine too. Made sense, but it's always good to check that. So we've redone that, and instantly this also changed the longitudinal, because I upped those numbers as well. But that's probably something I should not have done, because let's go back 1.9, 1.7. Which means that here is the braking stuff again, and the front has 3200 and it's about 1.4, yeah, and the rear has just over 5 and it's 1.5-ish. Okay, so these are the old numbers, and that gives us a total is that time? Yeah, is that true? Yes, that's a total force of that, and this is the sum of that, but this is only for 2 tires. And what is okay? Yes, because I calculated the required grip. Sorry, for braking we have to increase the speed again. If I seem confused, well, that's regular me. Right. High speed, looking at braking now again, because we just fixed the cornering. Right, high speed, then the required braking grip, and with the aero drag, the required grip for 1 front and 1 rear tire, because there is, apparently I felt it was logical to do it times 0.5. And then this is what we actually get now, so we get more braking grip from the tires, the maximum than we need to pull 4G braking, having taken into account the drag. So this is a possible way of doing it. Right, that fixed the lateral grip and double checked the longitudinal grip. Fixed these loads here, and now on to something else, the cornering stiffness, which is how fast the grip of the tire, the cornering grip, cornering force, how that grows as load increases. And you look at a certain slip angle. So now I am looking at the linear sort of sorry, the linear part of the curve. Let's look at the front and rear lateral, because that's what I want to be looking at. And then you can see the rear tire, which is a wider, stiffer tire, has a cornering stiffness, is basically for each degree of slip angle how much grip is added, and as the tire flexes and because of load sensitivity, typically the curve flattens at a certain load. It may even go down for some tires. It's very difficult to see that because there's lots of tire data. In my case, if you're fortunate enough to work with some racing teams, and these curves do all sorts of things, and again, real data isn't reliable, so you have to just follow your instincts, which may be wrong, and then try something else. It's difficult to judge this. But it does make sense that a tire with a much higher sidewall, for example, or much narrower tire is likely to be less stiff because there's just more sort of flexing going on than if it's a narrow sidewall, you know, really a low profile sort of tire. I'm checking this at 1 degree slip angle, which is sort of in the linear zone here, where you can sort of check the slope of the curve. Basically, that's the cornering stiffness. Front and rear are different again, naturally, because the front has a huge 120% aspect ratio and the rear has sort of a more normal, about 40% aspect ratio. The curves here are flat for the front because the calculation stops at the load of 4000 newtons. And this curve is sort of generic. Feel this is quite fine for a modern rear slick. And at the front you can see the blue curve here is a lot less steep and bends off a lot sooner because it's a lot less stiff. And what is the ratio? Well, it starts out at about 1.4-ish, and then as the load increases, the difference between the front and the rear tire sort of grows. So the rear tire loses less of stiffness, it bends less than the front tire. It's all something that would seem to make sense. Expect higher slip angles on the front. Slip angles are important, but also the relationship between the front and the rear slip angle is quite important, and especially in the, well, everywhere, but in the first few degrees of slip, so when you initially apply the steering, it does matter a lot if the rear tire is stiffer than the front tire. Bear in mind though that the rear tire sees far higher loads, so you can say, well, at 12,000 newtons I'm at 1500 for the front tire and I'm almost at 3000, well, not quite, for the rear tire, so it's a lot stiffer there. But don't forget that the car weighs a lot more at the rear, so these loads are far higher and you may be sort of on a different comparison there. So it's important, and also the steering response, the first, when you apply the steering, how the car settles in at what slip angle, because the front tires are steered but the rear tires sort of follow, and the stiffer your rear tires, the more sort of dependable perhaps your steering input may feel. If the rear tires will be a lot less stiff than the front tires, and then you apply some steering, then the rears would sort of, the rear end of the car, the entire car, because the rear tires are fixed to the car, would sort of float and search for a high slip angle. But if the rear tires are very stiff, then they don't yaw more, they don't create more slip angle than the front, then it's more stable. Right, that's cornering stiffness, that's fine. I have some arbitrary values here for the longitudinal stiffness, which is basically the same, the initial slope of this curve, but then for longitudinal, probably all quite fine. Right, so having fixed the grip levels, what else? Well, looked at the load, cornering stiffness, pressure I'm not going to look at now. Grip multipliers, what have we got here? We have a speed-based grip multiplier, which I simply don't know. There's no data on speed, so I'm going to zero that because we just don't know what that does. There is no tire wear, so this wear curve is here, but I will turn that off initially. And if there's no wear, then this curve isn't really used. The size of the stuff, alright. Optimal pressure doesn't do anything. The radius with load is logical is fine. Looked at patch other then, because there is another thing we have to do. The rolling resistance. typically a coefficient of the vertical load on the tire. And what is a typical value? Well, if you've got eco, Prius tires or modern tires, you may have about or a bit less than 1% of the vertical load on the tire being turned into rolling resistance. Racing tires are probably a bit more because they don't really have to be designed for the lowest rolling resistance. But now we have a front rolling resistance of quite a lot. Well, first of all, with the narrow front tires, you would expect them probably to have perhaps a bit less rolling resistance than at the rear. And 1.8% is quite a lot, so that is too much. This may seem a bit more sensible, and at the rear we need more. I expect, oh, more I said. That's not too bad. We have 1.3, 1.4% on the rear, and just over 1% at the front. So that fixes the rolling resistance. We did all the grip stuff. So for now, that right, radius RPM. This is how much the tire grows. I actually did look at this, the size of the tire, how it grows with speed, and it basically means that downforce increases as you go quicker and quicker, which pushes the car down and the ride heights are lower. But the tire does expand a bit, which is great because that means it sort of pushes the car back up a bit, and you need less stiff springs to avoid the car from bottoming out. What's a reasonable value? Well, it's not unusual to have something like this, and now you can see these curves are steeper. So between 0 and 320 we get about a 1 centimeter increase of rear radius, and at the front I'm going to use just about the same. Okay, for now that is the tires done, and what's next? Self-aligned torque, we don't do that. Tires, yes, let's reduce the wear to 0. No heating. This is a bit of a messy page here. No heating, no this, no that. Next time aero perhaps, or suspension. We'll see what I'm going to do. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the patience, because I've been away for a while with these videos, and hope to see you next time. And well, the snow is out, it's very cold, I'm going to stay indoors for a while. See you later.